Hey, this is Joe Mastriona, better known as Joe M., co-host of Life After Fame podcast, with my best friend, Joe Boglino, better known as Joe B. Yep, we're the two Joes. Thanks for being here today. If you've already subscribed to the show, thank you so much, and a big shout out to our Life After Fame tribe. We love you guys. If you're here for the first time, well, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to the show because today, like in every episode, we're bringing you the most amazing transformational stories of former pro athletes, coaches, musicians, and actors. Very people who have achieved the extraordinary. We share with you where they are now, what they're doing, and the challenges of transitioning and beginning a life outside of the arena and or stage. So buckle up, Life After Fame listeners, because this is going to be an amazing ride. Let's do this.
Welcome to Life After Fame podcast. Just imagine 70,000 fans cheering your name when you've scored the winning touchdown. Imagine standing on stage looking out at the crowd, rocking out to that chart-busting song you created. The applause and recognition you received for your masterful acting performance in that latest blockbuster movie. And then, one day, the cheering stops. This podcast is all about catching up with these stars of yesterday to find out where they're at now and who they are as people, beyond the stardom. This is a true human interest podcast about the people we loved to root for. And now, your hosts, Joe Mastriona and Joe Boglino.
On today's episode of Life After Fame, we are joined by 14-year hockey professional Kyle Quincey. Kyle played for a number of NHL teams, including the Detroit Red Wings, New Jersey Devils, and Colorado Avalanche. Kyle makes his home in Colorado with his two sons and his wife, Rachel. In this episode, we talk about how his family came together to rally around the cancer diagnosis, treatment, and recovery of his son, Axe, and the foundation they created to support pediatric cancer research. We also discuss his involvement with the Colorado Avalanche Alumni Association and what the organization is doing in the community and the support network they're building for retired professional hockey players. Lastly, we hit upon a health and wellness organization he's a part of, and it's called Just Beat It, created completely for the development and treatment of various health conditions using functional mushrooms. We hope you enjoy today's episode with Kyle Quincey.
All right. Thanks, Kyle, for joining us today on Life After Fame. Kyle, before we dive into your transition with being a former pro hockey player, now heading up the alumni with the Avalanche, would you mind if we just got an update on your son, Axel, and how things are going with him?
Yeah. No, that's good news. Yeah, I guess I'll go backwards. But right now, we go in every 6 months now. So every 6 months we go in, he gets sedated, puts into an MRI, and they check for any new cancers. And in a month or so, in about a month, we'll be celebrating 2 years in remission. So he's doing amazing. He's walking, talking, he's growing, he's doing great. Little milestones every day and learn how to jump and talk and all this stuff, where in the thick of it, they weren't sure if he was ever going to walk or talk or survive. So for people that don't know the story, the short version is March 1st, 14 days before the pandemic started, he was starting to projectile puke all the time. And I was a stay-at-home dad at the time. I was with him every single day, and things weren't right. We go in for the normal checkup. Maybe it's a stomach. Finally, after a month, this is something really wrong. So now, 2 weeks into the pandemic, call it April 1st, which is actually his birthday, his first birthday. He was brought into Children's Hospital, and they gave him a CT scan, and they found the brain mass, which ended up being a brain tumor. So it was called an ependymoma, which is the back your skull and brain, where the tumor was hugging his brainstem and his vital nerves, where we have spinal fluid that kind of goes uncontrollably throughout your body to the top of your skull, all the way down through your spine, where tumor was clogging it up. So he was puking to try to relieve some of the pressure, some of the fluids in his body. We got the diagnosis. He was in emergency brain surgery the next day. He started chemo then we actually moved to Philly, do, a crazy 24, 25-hour brain surgery, getting every single cell off of every nerve in the brainstem. And then we did 30 days of radiation after that. So that day, I'll call it September 1st, is when we say treatment free. So remission. So obviously there was a crazy, crazy time with being in a hospital during that time and the pandemic and all that stuff. But we're so fortunate to where he's at today, and I'm wearing the shirt to represent him. But that just shows the hockey community coming together. The T-Max Foundation is doing well, and we've dedicated ourselves to now figuring out a way to help cure this cancer or this awful disease for these kids that are just robbing them of their life. So we're very fortunate. It's hard to say that with all the stuff we've been through, but we met a lot of people that didn't have any sort of plan, any sort of hope. So that's where we dedicate ourselves in this foundation to rectify that and help the people that don't have a hope. So T-Max is that.
That's amazing. And we are thrilled to hear that he is doing well, and it sounds like he's in remission. That's fantastic. I want to read a quote from your wife that really impacted me the other day. She said, "As awful as this has been, it has been rewarding at the same time." And this is your wife, Rachel Quincey. "Axel has taught me to live in the present. It's easy to say you're going to live in the present, but it's really hard to do. I never have lived that way until now, and it's totally a different way to live. And I think it's the most rewarding way to live." So, Kyle, that hit home hard for me, and I think it'll hit home for our listeners, because she's absolutely right. We have the awareness that we want to stay in the present, but it's so hard. And what is tough about your guys' situation, or the people that have faced a really difficult situation or tragedy, is that unfortunately, the human experience, it just is set up that way. To have to have something like this happen for it to really bring that awareness that your wife had. And I tell you what, I was reading it, I won't lie, it brought tears to my eyes. And I went immediately, grabbed all three of my kids and hugged them as hard as I could. And I always do it anyways, and told them how much I love them and how much I appreciate them. Hey, live life one moment at a time, because that's all you got. I thought that was a fantastic perspective that she had, as well as I know that you have. I have some other quotes that you, when they were interviewing you, and how you dealt with it. You used kind of your hockey background, and if you had a bad shift, the only way to get through that is to not dwell on it. It's to go out there and be positive, and because you have another shift, you have another game. And I feel like life is very parallel to sports. You have highs and lows, and how you deal with it is vital. So how soon did that awareness come to you guys? When you found out, I'm sure there was a period of initial shock. And then did you just pick up and go, or what, did it take a while?
You said it, perspective is what we gain. So we're living in a pretty crazy time right now in the world. And a lot of people around us, they have their worries in different areas, right? So when you go through something like we did, I'm not sure if I can swear on this, but when people put their worries in one place where we didn't agree with, things just weren't important. And the grand scheme of things, when you're going through something like this, your perspective and what is very important to you is very in front of you every day, and you're reminded of it. There's no way around it. When things were going, the very first, the shock and the news, and there was a point of shock where you only imagine, like, all your friends and family from back home in Canada or Michigan, all the news came out. And I probably had 50 messages a day that I couldn't look at my phone until at night. And then I would get myself in a mental, and I would just write 50 to 100 messages every night. It's only human nature there was a little point of time when everything was happening and you got negative. Like, what happens if the surgery doesn't go well? What happens if chemo and all this stuff doesn't take? What happens if he doesn't make it? And that was a very, very short and dark tunnel where there isn't an option to do that. I think I'm an optimist already, but that definitely forced me to show me that it is important to be optimistic, and whatever life throws at you, you try to see the positive out of that situation. Was we got a massive dose of perspective and what is really important and where to put your worries daily. So that was the positive that came out of it. And he's stronger for it. We're all stronger for it going through that. And just shows that negativity, it was crippling, obviously, how dark and negative you could be in that time. So I try to be positive every day, that to my benefit going forward.
Yeah, Kyle, there's a term we've coined called the pearl that drops out of the poop, which is the good that comes out of the bad. And it's the recognition that, can you recognize the good? We all have experiences that we look back on in the past and go, wow, I really learned a lot from that. I grew from that. I'm better for it. But the whole thing that I think your situation has exemplified here is, and maybe it's survival, you had to look at the positive, what you could grab on during the time you were going through it. And I think that sounds like that helped you guys. A lot of the feedback that we read and the quotes that you guys had talked about with other folks, really quite inspirational, because one, it talks about being present. We live life like it's infinite. If we go around this world and we think tomorrow is going to last forever, then when someone gets sick, we're shocked. What? I can't believe that's happening. So the recognition of the present is really important. The fact that you talk about letting go, and I look at your career and some of the things you said about, hey, I had a bad period. You just have to put that away because I've got to get on the ice tomorrow. So there's a lot of positive that's come out of this, and we're really grateful to hear that your son is doing well. I wonder, you have another son, Stone. How did you work with him through this? Because I'm sure it probably had an impact on him
for
too
sure.
as well.
I think the positives was he was so young. They're 14 months apart, so he's pretty much just turned 2. My mom, dad couldn't leave Canada. They were totally locked down. They couldn't come down and help. One of the hardest things was our friends and family were scared shitless to be around us. So there was no support. And my wife's mom got laid off from her job in Michigan, I guess luckily, so she could come down and help. But there was one parent and one parent. My wife didn't see our Stone for a long time, months at a time, with like just breaks. I would come and switch in the parking lot so I can go see Axel. But part of what we do with the alumni and my other business is mental health stuff, which is part of the transition out of what I did for my first job. But you don't really know what impact he's had because he's still 4 years old. Like we know now that he was impacted. He understands what was going on to a point. And when that day comes, when he needs help, we'll be definitely there to talk with him and have any kind of support that he needs to talk through that. And maybe he was just so young, he didn't know what was going on, because it's crazy. They were 1 and 2 years old when all this was happening. So I'm really hoping that he wasn't affected. We don't see any signs now. He's a very emotional, compassionate kid right now. He's a good big brother. So we'll see in the future, but I think he should be good.
Yeah. So you've created a foundation which can be seen at teamaxfoundation.org, and it really raises awareness about amount of funding or what little funding goes to pediatrics. It is quite stunning that only 4% of cancer funding goes to pediatric care and the curing of these cancers.
That's all ages 18 and under.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow, 18 and under.
That's crazy.
So pediatric cancer is 18 and under. It's not, and if you just think of the loss of life, right? So if one of us had got prostate cancer or something, we've had a run. We've had a good run. Someone that's in their 60s, 70s, if a kid 1 year old, that's 85 years of loss of life. It should almost be flipped, in my opinion. And that goes to the political system and lobbyists and all that stuff. But the biggest thing is awareness that people, before this happened to us, we had no idea. We thought if it was the American Cancer Society or the government or one of these giant foundations had this figured out, but they do not. So awareness, and then the platform that we built with the hockey, call it Fame. I don't know if that's what it is, but definitely a platform where people give us a little bit more time than they maybe someone else, that we use that for the greater positive and good. And we can explain to people that there is an issue with pediatric cancer. And that's why we're raising money and doing the things we're doing to, one, raise money and raise awareness for this issue.
It's fantastic.
So let's talk a little bit about your transition out of being a professional hockey player, 13 years. And I have to be honest, I think that the normal guy, I'll consider myself probably in that world. I wasn't a professional player either, but I think it's lost on us how much transition you guys have to go through. So during your career, you're playing for a lot of different people, different coaches, different owners, different cities, different teams. And I think for the rest of us who work 9 to 5, that would be pretty tough. I think it would take a big toll on us having to move from one job to the next. Oftentimes, your transition is forced upon you, whether it's a trade, an injury, being released. In our case, it might be we got fired or we just want to change the scenery. But, you have to uproot your family. You have to move. You have to find out where the next grocery store is. I don't think you get a lot of empathy. I don't think professional athletes do, because you make too much money and you're famous and you get free dinners at the local steakhouse, which I think is complete bullcrap. And that's what this show is about, is to talk about it. So you weathered quite a bit of transition, and it sounds like that helped you with the challenge you had with your son. But can you talk about what lessons did you learn and what tools did you implement to go through the change of teams, the change of coaches, being traded and being able to keep on going, persevering through all of it?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to say fortunate, but again, this is the optimist coming out of me. We moved around when I was younger. I ended up going to 4 different high schools. So I was a new kid every year. I learned skills then that walking into a dressing room where, like, Columbus was a very good example. One of my last years, I was playing for Jersey, knew we weren't going to be very good. Signing there, knowing that if I had a good year, and that people would want me for the playoff run. So Columbus picked me up. They were a very good team in the East. And I got traded for Dalton Prout, which was by far kind of the glue guy in that dressing room. Very good, likable guy, tough guy, fought for all of his teammates. So I got traded for him. So I'm walking into that dressing room and they're already pissed off that Dalton's gone and I'm here. So
like it's your fault.
Yeah, well, but again, you're there for a month. Like you can't tiptoe.
Yeah.
Like you have to make good and like you play the next night, right? And these guys need to trust you and know that you have their back. So you got to go in there and kind of prove yourself all over again. I've been in the league for 12, 13 years at that point, but it doesn't matter. You start from scratch and you got to prove yourself to those guys in that dressing room right away. And make sure you go for beers that night and make yourself known that you're a good guy too. And it wasn't your fault. The way I looked at playing for different coaches, and the coach and the GM have a family and they have a job to do. Their job is to put the guys that are on the ice that they trust, right? So you need to gain the trust of the coach and the GM right away, training camp or right when you get traded. And that's just learning the system, being in the right place at the right time, and win all your battles. That is how I survived so long in the league. And then once you get out there, you know, your skill and you're going to get some good bounces and get some points and all of that stuff. But if you don't prove that you can learn the system and be responsible, then you won't get the opportunity. So that's pretty much the formula that I had going into all these different training camps, all these different dressing rooms, getting traded before the year, in the summer, during the season, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. Hockey guys they're really good guys. It's a very small world. Before you get in that dress, they've all called buddies that are on 2 or 3 other teams and those guys vouch for you. So if you're a bad guy, you're screwed right away. So there's really no option to be a bad apple in a dressing room in hockey. You don't last very long.
With your transition, as you're coming up to the end of your career, at what point, Kyle, did you start thinking about life after hockey? Was it your very last year? When did that happen for you?
So I got traded from Colorado back to Detroit, Lindstrom's last couple of years to make a run. I think it was 2011, 12. Then the lockout happened. And then it was like 2013, I'm playing for the Red Wings. And it was kind of like, and I joke about it, but my goal in hockey was to get bought out, right? Because that means I would sign a 4 or 5 year deal. And maybe they didn't want me, then I could go sign another one. But all joking aside, I only signed a 2-year contract. That was my longest contract. So I had to prove myself every single season, which is the way it should be. But it's very stressful. So when things don't go right and you're in a 10-game drought. So 2013, things weren't going well. And it was a contract year for myself. I stopped sleeping. I went into some pretty bad depression, anxiety, went to the doctor and got diagnosed with that. They put me on these pretty crazy drugs to get me through. And I'm playing 25 to 29 minutes a game at this point. It's amazing what your body can go through, but try playing that and then not sleep, playing 3-4 games in a week and not sleeping for 5-6 days.
Jeez.
Pretty crazy. So then at that point you start thinking, like, if I don't get out of this rut, I'm not going to sign another contract. And I'm 26 years old and I'm done. I don't have an education. I went major junior, didn't go to college. I don't have enough money to just retire at 26. So now I got to figure out a new job, all of this stuff. So it wasn't the last year. That's in the back of your mind all the time. But hockey is such a demanding sport, or any professional sport, is you have to be 100% committed to every shift. So you can't really have half your brain thinking like, oh, like be a fireman next week. Like you're 100% focused on the job at hand. So
Tunnel vision. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember what year it was, but it was probably like 15, 16. My very good friend, Steve Monador, passed away. And you're talking about transition out of hockey. Like that was like, oh, wow. That's like, all right, this is real. I need to be aware of this transition. So one of my best friends, Dan Carcillo, started a transition charity program called Chapter 5. So yeah, you guys should really look into Chapter 5. Yeah. And Chapter 5 was Steve's number. And Dan was one of the guys that we were all worried about him because of how he played. And like, I've had 15 documented concussions. So like, I was very aware of all of the new news coming out with the concussions and the TBIs and the CTE. So I was very aware going into it. The NHLPA, I got involved with them to try to get a program together. That failed. They did not do a very good job with that. It was all for current guys where, again, when you're a current player, you are focused on your job. Yes, you can go back and finish your school. Majority of us didn't go to school. This was our life, and it was more of a mental health issue, not a job issue. So that was 2015-16. Daniel Carcillo, actually, he won 2 Stanley Cups at the end of his career. He went into a very, very, very dark place. And Riley Cote, Philadelphia Flyers, tough guy, played together. He brought him to a farm up in Boulder, Longmont area, that he ended up doing a hero dose of psilocybin mushrooms and functional mushrooms and got him on a program with CBD and functional mushrooms. And it changes a lot of lives. It saved his life. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that he would have been dead. He was actively trying to kill himself.
Yep.
And now the story of Dan Carcillo is unbelievable, and where he is right now, where he was 2 years ago. So
that's amazing.
Part of what I'm doing now, part of what I'm doing now is I started 2015-16 being very scared and aware of the transitioning, going through it. My transition was absolutely crazy with trying to be a stay-at-home dad. Then my son, so next thing I'm 2 years out, 3 years out, and then I ended up getting a purpose. But the Avs alumni, I threw myself into that for my purpose to save my sanity. And I'm very, very passionate about it because of Steve and Dan and a bunch of my friends that I've seen that are not in a good place. So we can talk about the kind of what we're doing next. But yeah, the transition is very, very, I'm still going through it. You know, it's not over, but I've leaned on a lot of guys, Doobie Westcott, a lot of ex-pro hockey guys that are in the Denver area. And part of the Avs alumni is a network for guys to lean on each other. So the locker room is probably the biggest thing that we miss. And then it doesn't even, you're not even aware of it, but when you have 20,000 people screaming your name, and not having your name, but like just the adrenaline of walking through that tunnel every night, that is a powerful, powerful drug that all of a sudden,
dopamine,
years,
it's huge dopamine rushes, right?
So there's a reason why I've gone and seen some doctors here, and I'm like, I don't know why, but like I need to go skiing, and I'll drink and get pretty banged up and try to go as fast as I can down that mountain to push myself to the very brink
to feel it again,
to try to get some of that back. And I was wondering why that is. And he was like, dude, you've been doing this because juniors the same thing. We had 10, 15,000 people in some of the rinks, in some of the big tournaments. And that's 16, 17 years old. Yeah. So you've been doing that for 20 odd years. And then all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah. Right. It's just off.
Totally cut off.
Yeah.
Now you come home and you have a 1 and 2 year old and the wife looks at you a little different. You're not that celebrity that, she started dating at the very start. Now you're on the couch in your pajamas at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's just a lot. So like you said before, it's hard to complain to people that have not gone through it. That is why the alumni is so vital to us, because we can talk to the guys that have been through it, that are going through it, that have been in the battle, that are going through the transition right now, and guys that have been through it for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and guys that are coming out this year, next year, where we can help them understand if they're not alone. Like, we've all done it. I golfed with Peyton Manning the other day, and I said, dude, I don't know, like, I consider myself very middle of the pack. I was middle class. He was obviously the top of the mountain. Like, it has to be even a bigger kind of drop coming from the top.
Kyle, I'm so grateful that you're on today, because this is what our podcast is all about. We definitely celebrate your guys' career, but we realize and had the awareness, and being former athletes too, not pro, but where I had to transition and how hard it was and how heartbroken I was that the thing that I loved to do, which was sports, was over. And now what am I going to do? And we want to show that vulnerability side to you guys too, because I think a lot of people look at you guys as, of course, superheroes, that you have no feelings, or you shouldn't because you're privileged and you get to do something you love to do. That's BS. You're a human being, and getting to know you guys on a human level was what this show was all about, and understanding you guys have real struggles too, and probably 10x some of the struggles, certainly with the transition that normal people have. Hey, I'm transitioning into a new job. Oh, that's tough. And what do they go through? Fear, doubt, sense of huge loss. I really appreciate everything that you've brought to this interview today and this show, because I think it's going to help a lot of other athletes, but a lot of other just regular human beings. I think what you do with the alumni is fantastic. I think that there's a huge need for that, not only in hockey, but in all these different sports. Because as you mentioned before, mental health, and as men, we are finally speaking out. And so I also honor you for that as well, because we didn't grow up that way, right? My dad and their generation was very much the tough guys, and I never knew if there was a problem or not. And that's just what we were taught, is like to just push it inside. So,
No, for sure. That's why I try to tell my story as much as possible, because I'm not the same thing, right? Like I would battle through every single injury that we could during the playing days, but people have to understand that they're not alone. If you want to look at us as superheroes, well, we're superheroes, need to talk to people too. Sure. And we're definitely not. We put that uniform on, and for 2-3 hours every Saturday night, yeah, we do our thing, and maybe we're a superhero then, but before and after, and definitely after that's all gone, we definitely need to talk to people and need some support also. So we're all in it together.
100%. Well, and you've got to break through a bit of a taboo too, don't you? I mean, you guys are men. You're in the locker room. You're sweating and you're fighting and you're gladiators. And it's hard to admit, I need help. I think that maybe we're more prone to being able to do that now than we were maybe 20 years ago. But that's probably something you deal with in the alumni and talking to these other guys that you're trying to help.
For sure. Yeah. And like current hockey is a very traditional, old school culture, which is why it's so amazing. But also you'd like it to catch up to other stuff where like there should be a mental health kind of / performance coach. Any sport,
yes,
any job, anything. If you're not mentally dialed in and you're struggling with something on the side and you're pretty much carrying a baggage with you on the ice or to your job, it's not beneficial for performance. So it'd be nice to have an independent, someone that the team can't hire them. That's the thing. It has to be almost independent, where the guys can have total confidence to talk and unload the baggage so they can perform
actually
better.
Yeah. It sounds like I don't want to turn it into something commercial here, but it sounds like a business opportunity. And I think I understand what you're saying is that the team can't hire them because can they be trusted if the team is paying for these coaches? I would think that the mental game, I think a lot of us know that, yeah, there's God-given talent that is a reason for success in sports, but a lot of luck and between the ears is a big piece. Huge. And it seems to me that the athletes who've achieved the highest level of success seem, at least from the outside, have been able to harness that mental capacity to control it, to manage it. And I don't know, Kyle, it sounds like that's a great business opportunity to bring some real positive to the rest of these current players and environment.
It's the best job on the planet when you're doing it. It's for every yin, there's a yang. So it was obviously very hard to get there, very, very hard to stay there. And then when you leave the game, there's some things that, not even mental aside, it took me 2-3 years to get my body right with all the broken bones and labrums and strains and all of this stuff, kind of to a point where I have a program now to keep myself going, because I want to have a long functional life. When I'm 60-70 years old, I want to be able to walk and hang out with the kids and all that stuff. But yeah, it takes a lot of work every day just to kind of get out of bed and keep moving, keep the body going. And then
100%,
with the alumni and some of the stuff I'm working with Dan Carcillo and Riley Cote and the guy we met through that journey up in Boulder is we're investing heavily into functional mushrooms and different products. We have a product called Just Beat It, which supports just healthy lifestyle. And we're learning these neurogenerative compounds to these functional mushrooms called lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, all these different ones. Jake Plummer's heavily doing it.
Just going to say, Jake Plummer is, been big into that.
Yeah. So, but we see the problem. We're living the problem.
Yeah.
Part of it is now you have to find a solution to that. And that's why I'm heavily investing in these functional mushrooms to solve the problem. And it's not just hockey. It's not just sports. It is like the absolute bullshit that people have been going through for the last 2-3 years with this pandemic and stuff. Like they've been like being in isolation and being not around people, that there's a big toll on the mental health side. And we want to have an answer for all of these people. So that's what's driving us. A lot of things at a transition world too is understanding why you're feeling this way, but also give yourself a purpose to, it's a pretty big void that you've been, ever since 5-6 years old, I've been driving towards this one goal of playing professional hockey. Now that I've achieved that and that is my old job, now I need to find a new perspective. So what I'm doing now is these functional mushrooms with these nutraceutical companies. We bought a farm up in Crawford, Colorado, which is by Paonia, in between Telluride and Aspen. So it's a farm operation that we're growing these functional mushrooms and these products to help people. And on the Avs alumni, it's a giant purpose for me, taking care of the guys, and they go hand in hand. And then when I was trying to get sponsorships for our alumni golf tournament at Topgolf, but PointsBet, which is an online sports book here in Colorado and throughout the States, but we had such a good meeting that they offered me a job. So I now help run up the player development for PointsBet. So I'm casino host, and which is a very fun job. Keeps me in the game. I get to go to a bunch of the hockey games with clients and explain the game of hockey. And
that's awesome.
So just being part of the hockey world still, but also being in the positive way. We're still superheroes 8, 9, 10 times a year with the different charity events we do with the alumni. So growing the game to the youth and showing them being pillars in the community, which is what we always done while we played. Still doing that, and we're raising good money to give back to Greatest Game that gave us kind of everything we have. So that's why the alumni and the PointsBet stuff and the Just Beat It and all the functional mushroom stuff, it's all a big circle, and it's all good. And again, the functional mushrooms and the Just Beat It product, we have seen cancer cells being decreased in some patients. So talk about full circle.
Joe and I are very much into this. So, I definitely would love to have you on again to talk specifically about that subject, because I think it is a vital piece, not only, like you said, Kyle, for pro players and what they went through, but for the normal person and what we've been going through the last 3 years, or just life in general. I've been studying a lot on functional mushrooms and the absolute benefits, not only to our mental health, but like you said, curing cancer. People are coming away with a diagnosis that they're basically have 6 months taking these functional mushrooms, and all of a sudden they don't have cancer anymore. It's absolutely amazing. So we're super excited to talk to you. If you would join us again at some point. I know I probably should have asked you off the air, but I just couldn't help myself.
I'm very passionate about it, and there's a giant opportunity there because it's been labeled with a giant stigma forever that researchers couldn't even research it. So now that things are people are coming to their senses, and we're allowed to research it and explain to people and break that stigma and tell them that these functional mushrooms in this pill every day, it's a multivitamin for your brain. Pretty exciting, right? Because it's every time I talk about it, people are like, what? And then they try it. And then they try it, and it's like, oh my God.
Kyle, is there a website that people can reference to
I would go to Just Beat It. Justbeatit, I think, .com is the one we got going up now. And then tmaxfoundation.org is the other one. But all of the functional mushroom stuff is still so brand new, and it's still, we're still getting the company going, but it's still, we're hopefully to be on that ballot for November to legalize most or all of psychedelics for mental health. So that's a big one. Denver's obviously we've been around. The good thing about being shipped around, we've lived in every single time zone. We absolutely love Colorado. The fact that Denver has decriminalized psilocybin and all of that, it gives us a little more freedom to start this company here. So it's definitely an exciting time to be in Colorado and start this company and help as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I'll tell you, you mentioned something that I think is transcending into your life now. You have to get 100% every day, whether you're injured, whether you're depressed or upset, because you have to perform. It builds these rituals, builds this habit in you that you probably may have struggled with once you retired. Like, okay, I have this 100% regimen in me, and now I got to apply it, but I have no place to apply it. That has to really affect you. But it certainly sounds like, Kyle, you have made the bridge of giving that 100% in hockey to what you're doing now, because I don't know how you're doing everything you're doing.
Amazing
You've got
transition.
Kids, you've got these alumni, and you're reaching out. And I think when you get older, now you're still a young guy. You got a long way to go. I'll tell you, when you get to 50, you can talk. But
It's a lot scarier.
I mean, I have a hard time getting out of bed, and I didn't play professional sports. So I think it's tremendous. And you learn as you get older that helping others gives you the greatest boost. And I think, man, you've totally thrown yourself into that. Like Joe said, I'm just really happy to have met you today and to hear your story and to hear what you're doing. And we're really happy to promote it out there because I think you're doing a lot of good, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to the next time that we can dive into the good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, what an amazing interview with former NHL defenseman and current VP of the Colorado Avalanche alumni, Kyle Quincey. You can get more information on our website of all the amazing things Kyle is part of, such as the Axe Foundation, Kyle's functional mushroom company, Just Beat It, and the Avalanche Alumni Association. Please visit our website at www.lifeafterfamenow.com. Thanks again to all of our Life After Fame members and tribe for listening to our show. We love you guys. Life After Fame is not just a sports show, it's a show about life. We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe. And to find out about previous episodes and sizzling hot new ones, please visit us at lifeafterfamenow.com or by subscribing anywhere where podcasts are found. Join us next week as we're going to have yet another amazing guest to tell their story on how they made the transition from the big spotlight to their life after fame. On behalf of this episode's guest, former Avs and Red Wings defenseman Kyle Quincey, I'm Joe Mastriona with my co-host Joe Boglino. And hey, we know transitions are hard for all of us, but no one's on an island anymore with Life After Fame podcast. See you all next week. Peace and abundance. Take care.